Welcome to the Haven Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders, owners, and professionals are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Hear from industry experts on everything from marketing, leadership, financing, and more. Brought to you by Haven, a co-working space where you can connect, create, and get stuff done.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Haven Hubcast. I am your host, Nancy Sheed, and I am honored to be here with Dr. Melissa Sue John. She is the publisher of Laur Simone Publishing. Welcome to the Haven Hubcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Nancy. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, as somebody who works in books and authors, I'm really excited to dive into publishing. And what brought us together is you recently participated in the Haven Hatch competition. And we're going to dive into learning more about sort of how you came to be a publisher and what your publishing company is up to. So as I alluded to earlier, you are Dr. John. Doctors typically aren't publishers. So would you mind sharing with us your journey in terms of, from being a doctor to now, or maybe you always did want to publish books when you were little?
I was a researcher at Worcester Polytechnic Institute in Worcester, Massachusetts, and I was working with an educational psychologist and a cognitive psychologist. I'm a social psychologist, and we were helping preschoolers, so ages 3 to 5 years old, to learn engineering. We were using literacy to help them learn the engineer and design cycle, and my observation of the books that we were using in the curriculum was that they gravely lacked diversity. Having 2 Black daughters of my own, I went home and I was talking to them and I was like, you guys were born in 2001, 2007. There were a lack of diverse books then, but now it's 2016. You'd think that they would be more by now. It's 2016. And my 8-year-old at the time looked at me and she said, "Mommy, don't complain about the problem. Be the solution."
I love it. Okay. And what did you possibly respond?
So I said, "I'm not an author. I'm a scientist." And she's like, "We can do it together." So we started writing our own books and we hired children illustrators because adult illustrators are crazy expensive. So we found talented children to help us to illustrate our books. We learned about KDP, figured out how to publish it ourselves. And once we did that and started marketing it, people started reaching out to us and asking us to publish their books. And I said, "Sure, I'll show you how to do it." And they're like, "No, I want you to do it." So we became a business.
Wow. So technically your daughters are the founders and you are the publisher. We made sure to clarify that. And in terms of getting into publishing, walk through the stories. How did you get your story ideas? I mean, did they have a million stories? Like, I'd love to hear about what your collaborative process looked like before we actually get into the business of publishing.
All of our stories are from experience. So we love to travel as a family. And I noticed that all the books that are related to transportation focus on boys. They tend to be yellow or blue. They tend to have male characters. They're usually about catapults and forklifts and fast cars, right? And I said, wait. And again, I'm at an engineering institution. I'm like, why are there more boys here than girls? And it's because a lot of the books that children read don't compel them or draw them in. So we created Olivia Travels, which is a purple book, and it talks about all the different modes of transportation. So again, we wrote a book based on the lack. I'm an educator. I am very particular about spelling and grammar. So I wanted kids to learn about homonyms. And we'd say something like, the plane took off from the plains. So that way kids would know that it's important to know how to spell, because just because it sounds the same doesn't mean it means the same. Another book we wrote was called Olivia, Laur, A Guide to Things We Wear. And that book was written because at the time, Olivia and Alyssa, so the company's name is Laur Simone, named after Olivia Lauren and Alyssa Simone. So it's their middle names that the company's named after. So we're walking in New York City and we overhear a little boy say to his mom, "What's that woman wearing?" Now, this is New York City. So there's literally a Jewish family, a Muslim family, a white family, and then Black families all on the same street. So there's a lot of diversity in clothing and attire and apparel. And the mom said, "Shh, because as parents, we tell our kids not to stare, not to point.
Right.
But at the same time, children are curious, and we should use that as a learning opportunity to say, I don't know, but let's look it up when we go home. Right? Or even you can even say, why don't we ask her? Maybe she would be open to telling us. That way we don't preach discrimination or color blindness or the fear of the unknown, right?
Right.
We encourage curiosity. So we created that book because when I went to the library, all the books written on clothing were literally hats, shirt, pants, shoes. And if in terms of diversity, you'd find that same book in Spanish. But it didn't cover the hijab. It didn't cover the sari. It didn't cover the kufi hat. Literally everybody who was of color or of any other religion wasn't showcased in any of the books. So that book literally shows just children wearing different clothing, and then they're named in the pictures.
I think we could be an adult book as well. I think that could be on some adult bookshelves as well. I think
a coffee table.
Exactly. What I just love your constantly seeking opportunities in the publishing. We talked about just, the publishing industry has drastically grown, and calling yourself a publisher is not maybe something you possibly imagined, 10 years ago. And it is now easier to self-publish. But as you learned, and as people are now paying you, right, to help, just loading up your pictures and your words into KDP, which is Amazon's independent printing platform, it's not as easy as just an upload, click, and print, right? So I assume you learned a lot of lessons along the way in printing or publishing your books. How, if you don't mind me asking, did you get advice? Did you get counsel? How did you get started in doing it yourself? Did you learn by trial and error before you became the expert and started publishing others?
Yeah, I did learn by trial and error, and what would take 10 hours now takes 1 hour because you just mastered it and you make notes of what works for the bleed and what works for this. But also, I worked with another author who eventually created a public book club, and we would ask authors to send their books to us. So we would feature them as an author in our book club because our book club was different. We would actually have the author present. And when I would receive these books, I was just in awe of how poorly compiled they were. Like there were many elements that were missing. Some didn't have ISBN. Some didn't have barcodes. Some didn't have professional editing. So there were grammar, again, I'm a grammar police. There were just mistakes everywhere. So I realized that it was definitely a need, that everybody has a story. The research says 80% of Americans believe that they have a story, but some of us are just not as confident as telling that story. So with some professional expertise, you can bring that story alive.
I love that you're interested in bringing the story alive, but also sharing your expertise. So you call yourself a publisher. There's quote unquote independent publishing, but I know you identify your company, or you identify Laur and Simone Publishing as a hybrid publisher. Can you explain to our listeners who aren't so well versed what a hybrid publisher does, right? You're still publishing your own, but in terms of when somebody comes to you and says, can you do this for me? What does that journey look like in terms of hybrid publishing?
Yeah. So there are 3 types of publishing, as you alluded to. There's traditional publishing, self-publishing, and hybrid publishing. Self-publishing is when you try to do it on your own, with or without some success. Traditional publishing is where you submit your manuscript to a big publishing house and you get a nice contract that pays you. They do the copywriting, they do the marketing, they do the distribution. So a lot of the work is done for you. They do all the editing. You own the copyright, but you don't get very high royalties, like less than 10%. Now, hybrid, of course, in self-publishing, you'll get all the royalties for yourself. But a hybrid publisher is one that says, okay, you will own the rights to your book. You'll make higher royalties, but you'll get some assistance in publishing your book. So the main difference really is you have more ownership of the way the story is told. I remember going to a workshop where there was an author talking about how she wrote a book that she intended to be a modern day story, but the illustrator that the traditional publishing house had chosen, notice I said the traditional publishing house had chosen, she didn't choose.
I know you choose your words very carefully, so I am listening very carefully.
Chose to do it in like a 1960s style. So her story was present day, and they made it seem, as for a child reading it would think that this was something that happened in the 1960s. Whereas when you use a hybrid publisher, you have say along the entire way. You get to say, I want to use this word versus that word. I want to use this illustrator versus this illustrator. I want it hardcover. I want it paperback. I want it 8.5 by 8.5 instead of 8.5 by 10. So it's about ownership. with the help of experts.
I love that you're also, I think a lot of people, again, have no idea. You've mentioned ISB numbers and bleeds. I mean, and formatting and sizes and paperweights. Like there's so many pieces that go into that, just physically publishing the book. And then you also alluded to there are other pieces above and beyond, right? There's the editing. And then the other side of it is, okay, marketing, sales, and distribution, right? That's a whole nother, people think, oh, I have a book. Now what do I do with it?
Exactly.
Is that something that's also part of what you do that comes under your umbrella in terms of your hybrid publishing?
So whenever I market myself, I say I'm a publisher. I'm not a marketer. So I do help with the distribution. I do help with book launches, but I don't necessarily put that in a package for them to pay for. And I realize that sometimes authors will get disgruntled because now you've paid for a book and you're like, I don't really know how to sell it.
Yeah.
So using my Haven Hatch funds, my goal is to help my authors market their books.
Nice. Okay. And I appreciate you make that distinction because, again, there are lots, I've had the conversations with people, they're like, there's so many people involved in getting a book, from concept to in the hands of people. And I'm enjoying this conversation that, it's not just, oh, great idea, here you go. It goes from there. I would assume with hybrid publishing, are you looking for anybody? Is it a selection process? Is it an application process in terms of the people that you want to publish versus just publishing anybody? I mean, what does that journey look like with somebody who comes to you?
So on my website, I have a list of criteria. So I ask questions like, are you a member of a diverse or underrepresented community? Are you a child? Are you an adult? So there are little criteria because basically less than 5% of African Americans show up in publishing, whether from authorship to editing to sales, like just all the different facets that we just talked about. So my goal is to really increase diversity and to amplify voices. Also, my goal is to empower children. So one of my illustrators, Simone Clark, she's now 20 and she started with us a couple years ago when we first started. So now if she applies for college, she can say, oh, I've already published or illustrated a dozen books, right? How awesome is that for someone's portfolio? So I like to see if mothers write stories with their children. That way they get a line to say, I was 5 when I wrote a book. I was 7, right? So it's really about diversity in terms of age, race, nationality, religion, and ability. So I had one author that wrote her books with 2 of her autistic children, and she actually records them telling their story, and then we edit it in a way.
Wow. I love that. And then again, in terms of, traditional publishing can take years, and I'm not kidding when I say years and years. What does your timeline look like for somebody who might be interested in publishing with you? And has that changed as your business has grown?
Yes. I always call it our book baby because it would take 9 months to be released. That's because we were using children as illustrators, right? So they're in school, they're not full-time workers, just drawing all day for our books. So it used to take 9 months. Now that I have a combination of adult authors and adult illustrators and children illustrators, I can have a book illustrated in 2 to 3 weeks. And then adding the text, like I said, the more expertise you have, the faster it gets. So once the illustrations, which are the longest part, are finished, I can get the book done in a week.
Oh my God. I was like, if you said a month, like a week. Okay. That might be the fastest publishing time, we've ever.
So the entire process. So you have to consider first, we edit the manuscript, then we do the storyboard, then we have it illustrated, which probably takes 2 weeks. And then once all of that is done and I'm putting pieces together, I can have that done in a week.
Yeah. That's still back to your point about control, creative control. You have control of timeline. You actually have a say in I would like for my book to come out ideally, in this time frame. Maybe it's exactly yes. Whether it's Christmas or whether it's the school year or it's New Year's or it's summer, right? Like you have a lot more. I love that you're sharing that with, or you're transferring that with the people who want to work with you. So I just have to ask, sort of from 2000, we're 6 years in, your business has obviously grown. How has the industry changed at all in the 6 years you've been in it? From, the statistic you just said that less than 5% of Black people are represented in publishing at all. Are you seeing any shifts at all? Are you making headway? Or are you at least making headway with your imprint and then hoping you're, as you said, inspiring and going from there?
When you look at the numbers of like the traditional published books, the numbers are moving very, very slowly, if at all. But there are tons of Black publishers. It's just that because they're self-published, they're not given the same level of notoriety or acclaim or, right, just so their books are not being counted. So even though there are a lot of self-published authors, I don't think those are the numbers that are being counted.
Right. Because the distribution channels are different when you publish, and getting into bookstores and getting into, as you said, just the visibility. So I know you said you didn't do marketing, but in just looking at your website, you and your daughter seem very active in getting out into the publishing industry, into the marketplace, getting into schools. Are there specific things you now do or a part of your mandate to sort of be leading this charge and inspiring others? I mean, not just raising visibility for your company, but just to sort of get your books in the hands of the people who need them.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have our authors participate in any programs for school. So we'll contact school and say, listen, we can show up for talks for Black History Month, for Women History Month, for Children's Month, for Career Day, because our books are highly specialized on like the STEM topics. So we're like, we'll show up to do a workshop on gardening. We'll show up on a workshop for solar system. So we make ourselves accessible to libraries and schools for speaking engagements and workshops.
Awesome. Because I don't think people necessarily always think that way about, and again, you're getting your hands on the people that need to read them. We talked about Haven a little bit in terms of the Hatch and your experience that it was a pitching competition. I think you were emailed. We like to call it a nice Shark Tank. I hope it was a nice Shark Tank.
It was a nice Shark Tank.
And how was that pitch experience different from the ones you'd done before? And were you there, just out of curiosity, people are at different stages when they're making their pitches. Some are just like literally starting up and need seed money to start. Some are in growth mode. Some are in investor mode. Some are in like just maintaining, right? Or next stage mode. What were your intentions, or what were you looking to do when you were pitching at Haven Hatch, or kind of where you are now? Because this just kind of happened.
Those are a lot of different questions. Okay, I'll try
exactly. I was like, I want to know this, but I want to know this. So thank you for letting me. I'll stop. You talk.
All right. So at first, I'm a psychologist, no business training. So I've gone to this year, 2017, 2018, 2019. Yeah. So 5th, 6th year, I've been doing a lot of business trainings, either through Comcast, Verizon, like a lot of free trainings, right? Coursera, certificates. So I'm really investing to make sure that I know how to grow my business. I want when my clients come, they know that this is someone who has really taken the time to do the study, do the work. So I did Urban Hope, then I did Girls for Technology, then I did Reset, which is in Hartford, Connecticut. So I was participating in these workshops where they're training small businesses how to grow and how to scale. So I've already pitched twice by the time I applied for Haven. I think Haven said that they had 200 applications and they had to choose 5. So I was very excited to be among the top 5. When I pitched, what the main difference that I saw was like the timing. So the first one I did, I think, was 10 minutes. The next one I did was 7 minutes. And Haven Hatch, if I'm remembering correctly, because it's been a while now, I think it was 3 minutes. 3 minutes. So it was the shortest pitch I'd ever done. And I knew that they would ask questions. So I figured whatever I didn't put in the pitch, I could answer in the questions. But one thing I would advise anyone who's doing a pitch, one thing not to leave out are the numbers. And the numbers are what I left out. I gave a more storytelling, like this is the lack, this is how we solve, this is the problem, this is how we solve that problem. These are our solutions, these are the needs. And I did talk about our growth, but I never talked about like, these are our profit margins. These are our sale records. These are our revenues. So my advice to anyone looking for investment is to make sure to talk about those numbers.
That is great advice. And I think then by default, you just said looking for investment. It sounds like you're looking for next stage capital or funding just to sort of take you next level. And I think we talked earlier and you alluded to it, staffing, because it sounds like you cannot do all of this alone. You need more illustrators to help illustrate more books. You need more editors and copywriters to grow and do more books. So Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, and also, how do you find people? We're going to make the assumption you're getting that money, but how do you go about finding people? Just like, how do you go about finding books to publish?
So there's a law of attraction. And I know people don't necessarily believe those like, oh, if I think about it, it will come to me. But when I tell you, if you think about it, it will come to you. I reached out to illustrators and they were, saying $4,000, $5,000. And I'm like, I don't have $4,000 to do. And literally, as on Facebook, and I saw my friends posting, look what my daughter drew, look what my son drew. And I'm like, they're doing digital art. And I reached out to the parents and they're like, you'll pay them? I was like, yeah, I'll pay them, right? Pay them $500, pay them $1,000. That's way less than $4,000 and $5,000. When I wanted an editor on Facebook, a girlfriend that I met in college, she put, I opened an editing company. Illustrators. Once I created my website, people are constantly emailing me. Hi, my name is Adele. I have an illustrating company. And then especially if they're out of seas, they're going to charge less, right? But they're experts in their field. So it's really about attraction. People find me. All of my authors have been referrals. So like I'd print Imani's book and then Imani would recommend Yvette and then Yvette would recommend Ayana and Ayana, like, so they find me. So I have authors, I have illustrators, I have editors, I have several. What I need are people that have the expertise that I do not. I am trying my hardest to learn about marketing, but I need someone. I need a you, Nancy. I need someone who has a podcast.
Self-plug. Awesome. We'll talk offline. No, but it's a different, and you honored it, right? Like, and I think some people say they can do it all. And even I will say, I've had conversations with editors at traditional publishing companies, and they say, I just wish I could, not end my relationship. I wish my relationship with the client or writer or author ended at the book, but it doesn't. There's the whole next level. And the editor gets frustrated because that's not her expertise. And sometimes it goes great, but sometimes it doesn't. And so you put all of that amazing work, energy, heart, soul, life into the book. And what happens next is still equally important. I mean, so for some people, they just want to print it, right? But ultimately, if they have a story to tell, they want people to read it. So that next piece is very important.
It's probably the most important, right? Because I've read books that, in my opinion, are terrible, but they sell because the name of the author was a celebrity, right? So it's not always about the story. It's about how many people can you get to purchase it.
Right. And the visibility and we hate to say the platform. A quick question, now that you're growing your stable of I want to go back just to back to the book publishing for a second, though, is you're growing your stable of illustrators and writers. Some are the same. Sometimes you have a person who does both, but often you need to match them up. What does that matchmaking look like for you? Is it again, if the writer or the author says they have a certain style, what does that matchmaking look like? Or do they leave it up to you? Do you come back and say, here are 3 kind of different ideas we have for you, or 3 different people?
So a mixed method approach. So I have some authors that will come with their work already illustrated and say, I don't know how to format this book. I tried it on my own and I failed. So then that's a very simple process where I'm just putting the things together for them. So they've already chosen their illustrator. Then I have others that come and say, I like this type of art. I need it to be realistic, not cartoony. So I'll say, well, these are my illustrators. Which one do you want to work with? And then I have others that are like, I don't know anything about art. I just want an illustrator. And I'll say, this is the one I recommend. But again, visit my website. These are the samples of work that they've done. Choose.
Got it. Oh, that's helpful. So it's a bit of a collaborative with you gently guiding in terms of what you think is going to be the best product. I love that. I think I would be I'm not sure, I kind of have a style sort of person. This has been enlightening. Thank you so much for your patience in one, shedding light on some numbers that need changing in the publishing industry. And thank you for taking it on and for your daughter's inspiration in making this happen, and also walking us through the state of publishing through your lens and how you're working with people to get their stories told. It is a gift to help those. Did you really say it was 80%? 80% of us have a story to tell? Okay. That's a big marketplace. That's a very big marketplace. If people want to get in touch with you or connect with you or learn more about your company, what's the best way to do that?
Please visit my website at laurensimonepubs.com, LaurenSimonepubs.com, and you can click the contact tab and you can send us an email and we will reach out to you. You can also submit a calendar link if you just want to touch base before sending anything to us. But everything is on our website. For example, how we accept manuscripts, what type of manuscripts we accept, and what we're looking for. And even the customer journey is also shared there. So there are no, if you have questions, reach out. But most of your questions should be answered there.
And if you've listened to this podcast, you're much more educated. We will share that in the notes we'll share the link in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for your time. This has been a treat. And I'm sorry your daughters couldn't join us, but they are with us in spirit.
Thanks for listening to the Haven Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders and owners are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Haven is a co-working space and virtual community located in the heart of Fairfield County, Connecticut. Haven is a hub for business owners and professionals to connect, create, and get stuff done. Find out more about the Haven community online at haven.com. That's HAYVN.com. Haven Hubcast is produced by Sound Advice Strategies.